Another thing that I think most of us can agree on is that we don't want to be supported by the government. I think most Hispanics take pride in doing their own thing. Go to, I was in Dominican Republic several years back, driving down the countryside. Every 3 or 4 miles, you'd see somebody that would take the time to climb the tree and get the coconuts, chop them up and serve them on ice. Entrepreneurship, that level of industriousness is innate with Hispanics. This idea that there is a big brother government or that the government will be our daddy is not a mainstay of the Hispanic culture. So I think when you have a frank conversation with Hispanics, most of them will say, yeah, right on, you're right.
We have a great show for you. We're going to be speaking to Rich in just a few minutes. But first, Barack Obama once said that elections have consequences. Well, it's becoming more and more evident that the election of Joe Biden, and as Joe Biden calls it, President Harris, they're forcing Americans to face the consequences of their poor decisions. It is truly sad to watch the incompetence and the destruction being caused by Joe Biden in such a short time, and the issues and decisions that the President of the United States must deal with and make are complex and difficult. He may be a very nice man in person, but is simply not qualified, in my opinion, to be President of the United States. Almost every decision that the Biden administration has made has been misguided and wrong. Wrong on foreign policy, wrong on domestic policy, wrong on energy, wrong on immigration, and wrong on the Middle East. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. The House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, he said the other day that the border crisis is now beyond just a crisis. It's becoming a human tragedy. And believe it or not, the Biden administration is actually denying media access to the migrant facilities. McCarthy, he sent a letter over to the White House offering to help solve this problem and was just completely ignored. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas is saying that the Biden administration is just recklessly having illegal immigrants being released into Texas communities, many of them not even being tested for COVID. In January, the Biden administration, I can't believe this, did a 100-day moratorium on deportation. And that was stopped by a federal judge who said basically that the Biden administration failed to provide any concrete or reasonable justification for the 100-day moratorium. The Biden administration also has ignored Israel and the great strides that President Trump has made in the Middle East, and has chosen instead to fund the Palestinians despite their refusal to recognize Israel and negotiate in good faith. In California here, and maybe across the nation too, gas prices are up almost $1 a gallon since Joe Biden canceled the XL pipeline. And that basically killed the future supply of oil, and also killed about 7,000 to 11,000 jobs. This also bugged me too. He rejoined the Paris Climate Accords. Did you know that agreement requires the United States to send billions of taxpayer dollars to developing countries to assist in their climate policy? I just don't understand any of how we could be part of something like that. At the same time, it also allows Russia and China to increase their emissions while hampering the United States and hurting United States business. But there is hope, my friends. Conservatives are mobilizing like never before to resist Joe Biden and the Democrats. The Jewish Republican Alliance and JRA Nation are all in resisting these destructive policies. And we continue to invite you to join our alliance today and take this fight across the nation. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce fellow co-founder Mitch Silverman. Mitch?
Hello, JRA community. It is always so great when we are together. Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goals. That amazing quote from Henry Ford has guided me for decades. Boy, is that ever true today. So what are some of the obstacles that we're facing today that are truly frightening? Well, let's see. There's the governor of California, the governor of New York, the House, the Senate, the current occupant of the White House, President Asterisk. Then, of course, there's the fake news media and big tech. But other than that, well, all kidding aside, they are frightening obstacles. But let's go back to the words of Henry Ford. What are our goals? Well, we have lofty goals, and the great thing is they're achievable. One of our goals is to get rid of who we call Warden Mussolini here in California. There's a recall going on. We need 1.5 million signatures. It's over 2 million now, so that's great. Over in New York, Governor Cuomo, here's a guy that's responsible for more deaths than bin Laden. You know what they said? Give him an Emmy. But he made unwanted advances towards women. He's got to go. So the sharks are circling around this guy. That's good. What are some of our other goals? Well, we want to take back the House and the Senate in 2022. That's next year. That means it's preseason right now, game on. And of course, we would love to have a conservative back in the White House in 2024, God willing, for a repeat performance. Wouldn't that be great? So we talked about the obstacles, we talked about the goals. How do we get there? Well, here's the great part. There is a veritable buffet of things that need to get done, that must get done. And the great thing is, all you have to do is pick one or two that call out to you. What resonates with you? What gives you energy? What do you love to do that you're good at that can make a difference? So for example, can you donate? Can you volunteer? Can you make phone calls? Are these things that you like to do that you know will make a difference? Can you get someone registered to vote for the first time? Can you run for office? Can you support someone who's running for office? Or how about this? Are you a connector? We have a fantastic JRA member named Dahlia. And years ago, Dahlia reached out and said, would you like to meet Bruce? Would you like to meet Barack Lurie? He's a family friend. We said, we'd love to meet Barack Lurie. Barack has become a great JRA speaker multiple times. Last week's guest that we had, Kimberly Fletcher, I was turned on to her by John Voight. So who do you know, famous and not famous, that would make a great JRA interview, a great JRA speaker? You know what? Reach out to Bruce and I and let us know. Because now more than ever, conservative activism, your conservative activism, is needed to protect and preserve the Judeo-Christian values upon which this country was founded. And I will tell you also, the other thing we have going for us, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, am I allowed to say that? Well, when Pearl Harbor was bombed by somebody, supposedly a Japanese officer said, I'm afraid we're going to awake a sleeping giant. And in many ways right now, the left is doing that. They are awakening a sleeping giant in us, or a sleeping tiger, because for decades, the good patriotic American has gotten married, raised kids, gone to work, gone to church or temple, started businesses, employed other people, donated to charity, volunteered. And we have watched the left take over slower and slower. And now here we are. So I think a lot of good patriotic Americans are waking up and saying, hey, this is not what I want. This is what they may have voted for unknowingly, but they don't like it. So now I see a lot of people coming together and saying, this is not us. This is not America. The 1.5 million signatures in California, you think they're all Republicans? They are not. So that's working for us too. So as I've always said, what are we going to do? What are you going to do to make sure that we have a country that's worth fighting for? Because now more than ever, this is all hands on deck. We're up for the task. We hope you are as well. And now it's my pleasure to introduce who we affectionately know as Mr. Producer. Rich Valdes is the host of This Is the America podcast series on WABC Radio in New York City. He was an advisor to President Trump's National Diversity Coalition and the founder of the grassroots libertadagenda.org. Previously, he was the producer and director of special operations at Project Veritas. He is also the associate producer of the Mark Levin Show, where he's a regular guest host and affectionately referred to on air as Mr. Call Screener and Richie V. An entrepreneur since he was 16 years old, Valdés turned a haircutting hobby in his dad's apartment into an actual barbershop business as a senior in high school. His career in politics, education, and media includes positions as a spokesperson and head of public relations for Somerset Christian College and Pillar College. He serves as a founder and school board member of beloved Community Center Charter School in Jersey City, New Jersey, and was appointed to the Governor's Advisory Committee at the New Jersey Center for Hispanic Policy Research and Development. Welcome, Rich. We are thrilled to have you.
Man, buenas tardes. What's going on, JRA? It's so good to be with you guys. You know, you guys mentioned something before about alliances, and I'm thrilled to pieces to be with you guys. I really am. And it's so important to have allies like the United States has Israel as an ally. And I'm fortunate to call you guys friends. So thank you, Mitch, and thank you, Bruce, for having me. It's really an honor to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much for being here. Great to see you. You know, in my opening remarks, Rich, I lambasted the Biden administration for their first 60 days. What are your thoughts on what's happened so far?
Yeah, well, I thought you were really generous and kind, just as you were in my introduction, and I thank you for that. And that's me trying to be really polite. I think the situation at the border, first of all, should not be labeled the crisis. It should be labeled a disaster. What's happening there is incredibly inhumane. What they lied and said that Trump was doing, and we all know that the kids in cages thing, the whole, you know, the imagery of these chain link concrete floors and aluminum foil blankets, this was all actually recorded and videotaped and photographed during the unaccompanied minor surge of 2014 and 2015 during the Obama-Biden administration. So, I mean, the hypocrisy and the dishonesty runs really, really deep. Not to mention, you mentioned 11,000 jobs lost to the Keystone Pipeline. That's just the beginning. I mean, with that come all of the other tangential opportunities and jobs and businesses that go along with those jobs being lost. So, I mean, I like to think that, and I think people should always look at it that way. When somebody's losing a job, it's not that person losing a job. Oftentimes it's an entire family, a family of three, a family of four. If you're a Puerto Rican like me, it could be a family of 5 or 6, right? So you look at that and you say, oh my goodness, how can we continue a policy that 60 days in, we're wiping out that many people? It's unconscionable, and it's just bizarre that it's even happening. But we knew it would happen. It's happening. And I think we have to focus on how we move forward from here.
You know, Rich, great comments. So much of what you said. Here's my question to you. You're right. It's brilliant. You don't just lose a job. The family loses a job. My frustration is people don't connect the dots. They say, oh, yeah, I voted for Biden and now I lost my job. Gee, I wonder why that happened. Is there something you can say to give us a little bit of hope about people connecting the dots and saying, hey, this, I didn't like this, and maybe I should change the way I vote?
You know, to that, I look to the wisdom of the I think he was the 42nd president of the United States, the great one, Mark Levin affectionately calls him B.J. Clinton, Bill Jefferson Clinton, of course. And he said, right, repeating the Raging Cajun, it's the economy, stupid. So with that quote in mind, yeah, I think you cannot continue to win elections when you are beating the crap, and forgive me if this is a family show, but when you're beating someone senseless financially, right? Oh my goodness. How are you going to survive? You're not. People are going to say, listen, I like Biden, but I didn't like him that much. Because I think the reality is nobody said, man, this Joe Biden, he is terrific. Love his rallies. I can't wait for this guy to be in the White House. Nobody said that. It was more like some people didn't like Trump. Some people said, well, he might become a lefty like our friend Bernard Sanders, right? Or all the rest of those people on the extreme left. And they held their nose and took Biden. So, I mean, it was a perfect storm for them. Coronavirus put him over the top. And I don't think anybody's a fan. So, yeah, he's giving out money as much as he can. He's like, hey, what do you need? 3, 4, 5 grand? Sure, I'm sending you 3, 4, 5 grand. Sure. Who else can we give money to? I don't know that bribery is going to work. I really don't. I think it's going to hold on to the base. And that was even hard enough. And not to get off the topic too much, but if you look at the last election and you say, wow, historically, for the past 60, 70 years, Democrats have held on to African-American voters, Hispanic voters at very, very high rates, 65, 75, 95%. That wasn't the case 95 or 85% in this last election. So I think we saw double-digit gains amongst African-American voters, double-digit gains in Hispanic voters, mainly working-class men that identified as blue-collar by their own admission. So I think when you have somebody that says, hey, I'm a blue-collar worker, I work with my hands, I do labor in exchange for money, I like this guy, Trump. I don't care if he's orange. I like this guy. He puts money in my pocket. I get to feed the family and go on vacation once or twice a year. With Biden, they're not getting that unless Biden's sending them the check in the mail for the vacation. And I think a lot of people, especially immigrants, they don't like that. Nobody's looking for a handout. People want to earn their keep and move forward. So I think Biden's got a problem on his hands.
Well, he certainly does. And I especially like the impressions that you did. Those are great.
Thank you, sir.
I've been talking for the last year about this whole what I call cheat by mail, lack of signature verification, the need for in-person voting, banning ballot harvesting. It's like the old joke, my grandfather voted for Joe Biden. He never would have done that while he was alive. And so Republicans seem to be running on issues while Democrats are just collecting ballots. How do we get these reforms done?
I think the example is smack dab in front of us. And this makes a lot of people uncomfortable because most people aren't willing to do it. But the truth is, I look at him, I like to call him Donaldus Magnus, El Trumpito, the 45th president of these United States, Donald J. Trump, El Presidente. And I look at this guy and I say, look at Donald Trump. He is a billionaire mogul in lots of areas, real estate mogul, media mogul, all sorts of moguling going on. He's got this gorgeous building on Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue, Manhattan. And he said, you know what? I have a supermodel wife. I have this beautiful penthouse on Fifth Avenue, literally, with his name on it. It's gold in the building. And he says, you know what? I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to this place called the Swamp. I'm going to take my gorgeous wife with me, and I'm going to drag the rest of my family through the mud of the swamp to try to help America. Now, I don't care if you're a billionaire and you lose $1 billion in the process, or if it's Bruce or Mitch or Rich Valdes. We have to make those sacrifices to take on the swamp. People tell me, but they're doing this and they're doing that. And at what point, listen, that point came and left. This is not a hot war. This is a cold war of ideas. They're after your children's brain. They're after your children's heart and mind. When that's the type of fight you're fighting, you can only fight back, but for doing what Donald Trump did and going back and saying, I'm going to take on the swamp. This is how you did it to us. I'm going to do it right back to you. So when the media comes and lies on him, he says, no, you're fake news. How about that? 3 words. No, you're fake news. Right? Or it's a compound word, if you will. And those 3 or 4 little words, I think made such a difference in Americans becoming emboldened to take back their government, emboldened to say, you know what? It's okay that I love America. It's okay that I am a patriot. And we're going to do this thing. So I think we need more of that. That is the formula. That is the silver bullet, in my opinion.
Yeah, Donald Trump. I love when people get upset, Rich, and they say, well, he's terrible. You mean because he fights back? You mean because he doesn't take their BS? And when fellow Jews say to me, you don't like President Trump, do you? I say, oh, no, I love him. So I have a question for you. Tell us about Libertad and why it resonates in the Hispanic community. Very interesting.
Sure. Well, I think this is, again, one of those things, and you mentioned the Jewish community. I'll mention that. A question that I get a lot, being that, I am Mr. Call Spirit, I get to filter a few calls here and there. People always ask me, because they, Mark is viewed as somebody who's got all the answers and everything. And they say, why do any Jewish people vote for Democrats? And I think it's the same reason Hispanic people vote for Democrats or anybody else. When you buy into a fake, phony, fraud story that's being fed to you left and right by any channel you turn on, you have but one choice of an opinion to make because you don't have all of the facts. And lamentably, Spanish language media is honestly a bigger culprit than Comcast and their subsidiaries is, with the propaganda that gets pushed forward as news. So, coming down the escalator and giving that announcement speech that he gave at Trump Tower in 2015, when he says, the contraction of they're sending us, their THEIR and them changing it to THEY''RE, like they're rapists, they are this. That was never ever corrected on the record. So you had, the only Spanish language media that existed, two of them, and they compete, and they were in agreement. We're going to trash this guy and say that he's a xenophobe and he's anti-Latino and he's anti-Hispanic and he's terrible.
No.
Unfortunately, like they would say, you can't get unpunched in the face and you can't put toothpaste back in the tube.
That's really great. Actually, when I was in New York, I actually rode down that elevator in Trump Tower, and that was kind of a treat.
Yeah.
Last week, I spoke about this $1.9 trillion so-called American Rescue Act. It's 1.9 trillion, and about $1 trillion of it has nothing to do with COVID. It's just a Democrat wish list. And it's certainly not a bill that's going to rescue America. It's really an attack on the financial stability of America. What are your thoughts on this American Rescue Act?
Yeah, who's going to rescue America from the American Rescue Plan? This is horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Where is, I ride the subway every day. You ride the subway, and there's this little red lever that's there on the subway. It's an emergency brake. If you have to pull it, we need an emergency brake for Congress and the reckless spending that's going on. And I think when you have a situation where people are out of work or people have been impacted by the pandemic, it's one thing. When you have people that are saying, "Oh my gosh, I not only do I own 3 or 4 homes, but my income wasn't, and I earn over the threshold, but yet I got a letter in the mail saying that I'm getting this," or I looked at my account and I had an extra 4,200 or 7,200, whatever that amount was. It makes you think. I don't want to say there's incompetence at the federal executive level. I don't want to say that, but I probably will say it, because I think this is a bad idea. It's a bad idea, and they figured out what's the easiest way to give people money back. Let's go straight through. It's what Trump did. It's what everybody else did. He did it at the height of the pandemic. And again, even then, I was saying, look, I like Trump. It doesn't mean I have to like this plan. I don't like the idea of. I'd much rather them say we're just not going to take taxes, or we're going to collect less taxes. They would never say that, right? They'd much rather hand out money here, hand out money there. And to me, it goes to them taking credit. It also goes to trying to establish, to me, which is the most dangerous thing there is people that believe that the government is there for their providence, to be their provider. And that to me is the scariest thing ever. It eliminates any faith that you may espouse in looking at our maker as he who provides all, but it also creates this dependence on government, which I think is incredibly dangerous to liberty as a whole.
So true, Rich. I love hearing you talk. Now I know why you have your own podcast, and this is great. When with Rush passing a month ago, Mark Levin gave such a beautiful tribute to him. They still play clips from Rush, and today I heard. Well, sounds strange to say. Today I heard Rush say, but today they played Rush saying that President Asterisk is simply a placeholder. That Obama's the puppet master. The whole idea is to, at some point, get Biden out and put in Kamala Harris. What do you think about that?
It's pretty evident. And again, I don't know if it's so much Kamala Harris as much as it is, and I like to call her, by the way, Kamala Eres, with the Spanish accent, Kamala Eres, which translates into "how bad you are." But I guess you got to speak Spanish to get that one. But the point with that, I think Biden himself came in saying he would not commit to running a second term. So to me, that's concerning, but honest. Saying, look, whether it's his health, his acknowledgement of his age, and that he may not have the wherewithal, whatever it was, it's concerning. Many years ago, I had a boss who told me something, and I answered in the affirmative, and I said something like, "Yeah, it should work out." And he said, "Yeah, it should work out." He said, "So I'm gonna do it the way I got it." So Richard, if I'm a surgeon and I'm going to you and you're my surgeon, I tell you, can you save my life, doctor? What are you going to say? And I said, so it should work out. And he said, does that inspire confidence for you? And I was like, nope. So I realized you have to be a little bit more effective in your communication. And I think with Biden coming in and saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to be committing to a second term. Makes me think, then why should I trust you with one term? And I think they effectively made this sale that whether they were good in making the sale or not is very debatable, because we looked at the election results in all these states, in particular the ones that were in question. And it's a travesty. It's a real miscarriage of justice. It's a miscarriage of election integrity. But all that being said, it may be Kamala Harris, it may not. I mean, what I think we do know is that it won't be Biden moving forward forever. And some people are saying 24 months. I don't know. I think he does seem to me to be extremely hands off. He's not going to the border. He's not doing a State of the Union yet. He's avoided things. He does these what seemed to be pre-recorded, even if it was live. There was nobody in the room. It was just odd, and it seems it smacks of funny business when you're dealing with the president of the United States, especially when you're following a guy like President Trump, who is like, you know, hey, I'm walking to my helicopter. Oh, you got something to say? Sure. Yeah, you're fake news, right? and you have to just really appreciate that. So I think Biden leaves a lot to be desired. Kamala Harris, I think, would leave even more because she doesn't have the experience that I think you really, really do need. And the experience that she does have, or at least the track record she brings to the table, doesn't impress me in the least.
Well, you're so right, Rich. There's certainly a difference between the two presidents. If we had funny video of Biden during the first campaign, if he ran again, I think there would be even funnier video of what some of the things he'll say. You know, during the election and right after the election, during the transition, Joe Biden and President Harris repeatedly talked about their mistrust of the COVID vaccine. They don't trust Trump. It's almost like he made it in the basement, and they totally ignored like the whole Operation Warp Speed. And now they're acting like Biden single-handedly invented the vaccine and that he's doing everything he can to get it out to the public where he had nothing before, which I think is a travesty that he could do that.
You know, well, that depends on whether it happened, when he was tripping on the steps or not tripping on the steps. And I don't know if you've seen that yet, but he's not in great shape. And honestly, I make those jokes, you know, for the sake of being provocative. In my heart of hearts, I feel terrible. You know, my dad had a brain injury that led to an early onset of dementia. I've seen it. I see so much of the symptoms that my dad, his name, by the way, Juan, I believe that. And I really love my dad. And I saw him deteriorate. And I'm seeing the same thing with Joe Biden. I'm not a doctor, so don't try to sue me for diagnosing him. But I will tell you this. It's sad. It's sad that the United States is doing that. It's sad that Vladimir Putin is calling him out. I would call out Putin and say, you're a bully. You know, this is an old man that's somewhat compromised, and you're picking a fight with him. And who's going to have his back? Kamala Harris? And not a sexist comment, just we don't have a leader that can match the wit, not even the strength, the wit, I think, of Vladimir Putin, because these guys, these despotic types, they think a certain way. And I think you have to really get the way they think. And we look at Joe Biden, and he may have been a whippersnapper when he was wiping the floor with Paul Ryan some years ago, but I could tell you now, he's not going to do it with Vladimir Putin. And it's a bad thing for America. I think right now we're being embarrassed.
You know, Rich, I'm sorry that it happened with your dad. It's such a tough thing. The challenge here, as you know, is that weakness is a provocation. So this endangers the whole country when bad people, bad leaders are going, wait a minute, because we had with President Trump, we had a dominant alpha male, the likes we've never seen before. And now, you know, we can joke about how feeble he is and falling up the stairs and all this stuff, but it puts us in danger. These strong countries are going, hey, here's our opportunity.
Well, sure. Look at what happened today. The Secretary of Defense made a statement and said, we're ready to fight. Quote, we're ready to fight with respect to threats that are coming from North Korea. Did you ever hear Donald Trump say we're ready to fight? I think he walked around that as best he could so many times. He said, oh, they won't like what happens. If they do that again, don't you dare. Oh, no, I'll go and shake your hand over there and we'll make nice. I mean, he's a deal maker. And I think he did a great job. We didn't have this level of provocation, but we have it now because they can sniff out the weakness. There's blood in the water. It's kind of like the Democrats going after Andrew Cuomo. This is how they're treating Joe Biden. And I don't want the rest of the international community to do that. But the answer or the question, I think, really becomes, how are we better off? How is America and our allies, how are we safer and more secure with Joe Biden and his feeble self or with Kamala Harris?
We're not.
That doesn't sound like a very appetizing set of options, right?
We're not better off. And that's true. You know, it's one of the things that we, you know, in the Jewish conservative world have noticed is Biden's about face. First, he snubbed Netanyahu by not calling him. You know, now he is undermining everything that President Trump accomplished in the Middle East with peace treaties and recognizing Israel. And now Biden has now chosen to fund the Palestinians without making them even come to the table or even negotiate. I just think what he's doing is just absurd.
Call me crazy, call me whatever you like. I get called a lot of things, but I'm going to tell you, I had an argument with a buddy, not even an argument, you know, going back and forth about political stuff on Facebook. My family's from Puerto Rico and New York. His family's from the Dominican Republic and New Jersey. We're talking about something like the minimum wage and taxes. And he brings up, but Trump doesn't like Palestine. And I'm thinking, how does that fit into this debate that we're having? Where did that come from? To me, it raised a way bigger question of why is that even a talking point with amongst two Hispanics arguing about fiscal policy? And that's the real, why is it happening? This has been a sticking point. I have friends that are from Palestine. I see what's happening. I can tell you, he's told me, have you been there? No, I haven't been there. So I don't make too many judgments on what's happening. I do know that Israel has a right to exist, and they're there, and they have a right to defend themselves, as does the authority and the Strip and whatever's happening. I think a bad situation has to end, and a good situation has to begin. But we can't get to that if we are now politicizing through critical race theory, which, you know, you think, how does that fit in, Rich? Well, I'll tell you, the PLO and embracing, you know, the PLO of yesteryear, Arafat and that organization and its iterations throughout now, present day, that has become a part and parcel of critical race theory. And you guys know this better than me, not because you're Jewish, but because you're Californians. And they're ramming this into the public schools. There's, I think, 1.7 million high schoolers in California. And I just did this on my show yesterday. And I was blown away by these statistics that they had issues with liberal Jews that were on the school board and part of the State Department of Education saying, we don't want this curriculum because we believe it's anti-Semitic. And the promoters of the curriculum, which their name escapes me, but they call it model curriculum, something, or something model curriculum, saying, well, we don't want to whitewash this. We don't want to whitewash the Zionism in this. And I'm thinking, wow. I mean, this is, you know, with people, critics, liberals saying, this is not education. This is literally political indoctrination to the tune of proselytizing. And because they embrace it as religion. And I think, man, that makes too much sense. And it explains exactly why a friend of mine who, you know, I know from the barbershop and who argued with me on taxes and the minimum wage brings up this nonsensical point of, but Trump doesn't like Palestine in an argument. So it goes to show you that this is way beyond actually the actual issue. They're using this as a wedge issue, which really fascinates me because I think so many people, if you're not Jewish and you're not Palestinian, don't really feel connected to this issue in many ways. They may feel like, Israel is an American ally and we have to support them. And it usually ends there for most people. But I think so many people, in particular, those that are in support of Palestine and those that are support squad members that take that policy, they think, you know what, BDS, great idea. Let's do this. Let's boycott that. And I think that's not good for anything, especially if you're trying to cancel people because of their faith or where they come from.
So true, so true. Rich, we have several questions from the audience. I want to go over a couple of them with you.
Yes,
we
sir.
have a good question from Charles W. What's being done to make ballot harvesting illegal? He mentions he only hears of Pelosi's bill would actually do just the opposite.
So I can't speak authoritatively about that, but I can say the only way those things actually ever change, there's two things that move anything in politics, at least from my observation and my view, my experience. And it's being able to organize people and being able to organize money. If you can raise some money and organize people, you can make a change. You can go to a politician and say, hey, look, this is the position I want you to have. And we all know politicians oftentimes are like prostitutes. You know, they can be swayed in many different ways. And it's a sad truth. And maybe it's a crass analogy that I made, but I think it's a real one. And I think Trump is the one that pointed it out, saying, oh yeah, I used to give money to you and to you and to you. I know you. And I think calling them out that way, we have to replace the political system. We have to replace the people that are in the classrooms. And I don't just mean like electing new ones. I mean, you become them. Our children become them. We need to make sure our children are involved in grassroots activism, realizing that, you know what, the teachers in the classrooms today have been groomed and they've been trained to do these things, where it's so much so that they're now having a conversation about bringing critical race theory to 1.7 million high school students in California. And this is happening all across the country. I just happened to read an article about that. So I say that comes full circle that way. Ballot harvesting is no different. It's the same thing. These people are promoting their agenda and they've taken over. So what I mean by that is you're talking about block captains and ward leaders and precinct leaders and precinct captains, and the entire electoral system. They do it year round, every election, whether it's dog catcher, school board, president, you name it. They're running practice drills every time. Too often, at least from what I've seen, at least in blue states, and I've only lived in blue states, you see Republicans, they do, you know, they're usually 75 years old plus. They come out on election day and they're the faithful. But that's it. And the reason that's it is because we've been ineffective in reaching the youth, ineffective in reaching younger people that will commit their lives and their careers to making a difference and a change. And I realize it's a tall order, but this is, I think, I'm going to call it the Trump example, where you don't have to be young, but you have to be bold and you have to actually put your career, get up, maybe move somewhere. And that part I think is important. People push back on me a lot when I say this, like, oh, this guy's out of his mind. But I'll tell you this, there'd be no Beto O'Rourke and there'd be no blue Colorado if people didn't get up and move to another state to elect.
I think you're right on the money, Rich, with the fact that we're not doing a good enough job of reaching our youth. Unfortunately, we all know the media doesn't report fairly. Democrats are now trying to shut down conservative talk radio, shut down conservative television. They're attempting to do now a so-called study on packing the Supreme Court. Conservatives are losing their jobs if they speak out. You have organizations that are being removed from Apple and from others. You can't get their apps like Parler. It's becoming more and more difficult to fight the censorship.
We can't win every fight, but we have to never stop fighting. So I make another example of getting punched in the face. If you're getting punched in the face, you have two options. One of them is going to be to say, oh boy, excuse me, why are you punching me in the face? I don't recommend that one in the least. I do recommend punching them back in the face, probably more times than they've punched you, and making sure that you block a few of those punches. And I think that's what's happening right now. You know, so we're getting punched in the face and we're like, oh, why would you do that? That is so wrong. But I have kids to feed. Why are you canceling me? It doesn't work that way. You must punch back. You
You're
have
so
to
right.
fight back.
So
We
right.
have to create our own way to make money. We have to do more things. Just think about this. And these are the two people, and I'm not trying to compare them. This isn't Trump worship. I just did an example because everybody knows him. But again, look at Trump. Why on earth would a guy in his 70s who's been a Playboy billionaire his whole life, then 10 or 15 years ago, gets married to a supermodel? Why on earth do you walk away from that? Why? There's really no impetus except to save America. That's one example that I think we really, I'll keep saying it until I'm blue in the face, because it's so important that I think we realize if he can do it, we can do it. Now, some will say, no, it's because he's a billionaire. He can do that. He's got Mar-a-Lago. He's got this. He can afford to do it. I don't know much about being a billionaire. I've never been one. Maybe you guys have. I have not. But I could tell you this. He went in there with this much money and left with this much money. And no billionaire wants to do that. You and me don't want to do that. So I think that is the lesson. Sacrifice is incumbent upon us in order to win. Another thing I'm going to say is George Washington, right? The father of America in many ways. Imagine if George Washington said something like this. The British are telling us where to pray. The British they're posted up in our house. He's looking at my wife while she cooks dinner. I don't like this stuff. What do I do? Oh my gosh. Can I call Thomas Paine? Thomas Paine, what do I do? What do we do? I need you to tell me. Thomas Paine, all you do is point out the problems. Forget this common sense thing. Come on, tell me what to do. Please stop. Please stop. Put your pants on. Pull your dress up. Whatever it is. Fight. And I mean fight in the figurative sense, of course. This is what we must do. This is not just some people fight and some people don't. You guys mentioned you're Jewish. I'm a Christian. I go to church on Sundays when I'm behaving. And I remember one time my pastor tell me, you can't just come to church and sit in the pews. And I thought, that's exactly why I come. I literally don't want to be a minister. I want to sit here and have you minister the word to me so I can absorb it and go home and feel great. And I thought about that for a long time and realized what he was saying was true. If we wanted to see the change that we believe that God could bring to the world, we have to be that change. We have to live that change. We can't just expect one guy in front of a congregation of Lord knows how many to be the change agent. It's got to be school. We have to all be the change agents. So I think that's the case here. And oftentimes people are really good at making excuses. Well, I've got kids. Well, I've got bills. Well, I'm 80. Forget the excuses. We have to figure, what do we have? So what can you do at 70? What can you do at 80? What can you do at 15? And we've got to just fight like our lives depend on it, because honestly, it may not be our life that depends on it today, but America as we know it depends on it right now.
Brilliant. Rich, we have a comment from Adam M. Thanks for retweeting his post about the Iran nuclear activity a few hours ago. And his question is, what's it like working with the Great One? Is he really mad all the time?
Well, some secrets can't be revealed. No, I will say a big shout out to Adam. To me, it's an honor and a privilege to do that, because I learn a lot. He's a brilliant guy. He's actually one of the most compassionate people I know. My colleague, Mr. Producer, there's actually two of us. I'm Mr. Call Screener, Mr. Producer. And it's really like three of us that are involved in that whole production that goes on every day. And it's remarkable. I've learned so much. And I can honestly say I'm a better person today for having learned so much of what I've learned. No, he's not always that mad, but it doesn't take much.
Mitch, I think you need to do your impression of Mark Levin.
Well, you know what, Rich? I was blessed. I was at the Abraham Accord signing ceremony with him.
Oh, in Israel.
Yeah, and I was at the White House Hanukkah party with
at the White House.
And I walked up to him, and I'm sure internally he was rolling his eyes, but he was very gracious. And I said, I'm going to do my impression of you. And I said, shut up, you idiot. That's right, I said it.
I bet he laughed.
He did. He chuckled. He was gracious.
Yeah.
I thought it was very
He's
a
a
good
real class
impression.
act.
You know,
Oh, it's terrific. It's spot on.
You raised an issue about the Middle East and how, you know, many people look at it as a kind of like a side issue. It's interesting that many Jews on the left, when you ask them, how could you have not supported President Trump for his great support of Israel, for Jewish Americans, for peace in the Middle East? How could you have not supported him? And their answer was always, well, Israel's not my only issue. They even take it, and it's so sad because it may be one of the most important issues to Jewish Americans and Jews all over the world. And I think it needs to be more of the forefront. And the fact to see what Joe Biden is doing, you know, I think it really undermines the safety and security of Jews and Israelis.
Well, I agree with your statement 100%. However, I'll say that people just don't think monolithically. And that's something that I do support, although I think they should pay attention to more issues. And to circle back to what Mitch said earlier, when he asked about the Libertad agenda, it's similarly the same problem. While there's not a piece of land involved in safety and security, but the ideology of it is very similar, where you have people that are like, you know, you're kind of supporting or voting, going in against your own best interest. I think that I've never met another Hispanic family that says, oh, no, we don't want to work hard and pursue the American dream. They all do, whether they're immigrants or fifth generation. Everybody wants to do that. It's all about family. It's all about vacations. It's all about, you know, having a big home so you can have all the grandkids over, because family is it. That's what we do. It's a huge part of it. You know, it's funny. It's like a joke. Irish are the same way. My brother's married to an Irish girl, and he often jokes that she doesn't have friends. She has sisters, and she does. She's one of 4 girls, and my daughters are like the best of friends. So I think oftentimes when you grow up in a large family like that, where that's culturally part of what you do, you grow up that way. But to tie those two issues together, when you have a group of people that work against their own best interest, to me, the first thing you have to ask is, what information are you receiving? What are you consuming that makes you think that it's okay to say, you know, I'm an American, but American issues don't, you know, that's not my only issue. All issues should matter. And I think we should pay attention to these things. And it goes beyond just picking teams and saying, well, I'm a Jew and I like Israel, or I'm Puerto Rican, so I support Puerto Rico. It has way more to do with that. I think it has to do with the overall picture of things. Just imagine how things would be in the Middle East if we didn't have Israel as an ally. I think that's a scary scenario in many ways. I think Israel's an anchor that brings about peace, and we wouldn't have President Trump's 4 nominations for Nobel Peace Prizes and all of these Arab countries that signed on to the Abraham Accords, which I think is definitely a step in the right direction. Of course, Biden, I think, thinks politically, and he has political disagreements, and his view of diplomacy is different. And I could respect that idea. But when you do things that I think work to undo and undermine the safety and security of the United States as a whole, including our allies, then it's something we have to have a conversation about, because I look at that as reckless.
So much of what President Asterisk is doing is very reckless. It's very, very disturbing. We have a really good question from Shawl S. Something you alluded to earlier about the border. President Trump really solved that problem pretty darn well, and now it's back. So ultimately, the question is, what do you think is going to happen? How is this going to unfold? How is it going to resolve itself at some point?
I think if we had a better idea of what the thinking process with the Biden administration is, we'd have a better idea of how this is going to end. One can only, I mean, the whole situation begs the question, why on earth would we have done this when you know that whether you like the guy or not, we had solved the problem, right? You're right. It dried up. It was shut down. We had, in effect, shut down the border that was unable to be shut down because of the pandemic and because of the great economy and because of so many things. Finally, it's trickling in. There's not a floodgate. And Biden decides to change things literally in office days, right? Second day, third day, he starts signing executive orders. Stop, you know, it's almost like he thought he was Reagan. You know, tear down. There's people in all over the place. And it makes you think, if he doesn't want them here, why would he bring them here? And I think then they must want him here. And the question is, why do they want him here and how many do they want? So I'm thinking there's probably a number on this. It probably has to do with redistricting a congressional map and saying we need this many people and we will cultivate and bring them into a pathway to citizenship. So maybe we can make them into voters. We can continue to indoctrinate them. And then once we got the number we need to make sure we never lose another election, or at least not for the foreseeable future, then we can go back to the Trump policy and shut it down. And I think his colleagues, the presidents of El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico mainly, have really kind of embarrassed him into saying, you've got to do something, man, because we're trying here, but we can't do it without you.
Rich, my in-laws came to this country speaking very little English and have prospered. And one of the things that I attribute and they attribute to their success is learning English and hard work. In fact, they tell a story about being here and someone was talking to their dog and telling the dog to sit. And they said in Spanish, well, look, the dog understands English. We have to understand English. So they did that and have been successful and prosperous and great American citizens. And I'm proud of that. And what importance do you hold in making sure that people speak English as a common language here in America?
This is funny. I always tell people, this is America, speak whatever language you want. But if you want to make some money, you better learn English. And I think that's really the lesson. And it's a lesson like these people learn. I'm a big believer in liberty. Speak whatever you want. But honestly, it's going to be difficult for you to get around and to get along. Because if you're going to have to resign yourself to living in strictly ethnic neighborhoods where people of like ethnic background live, whether it's an Italian neighborhood, an East Asian, whatever it is. And I think people have to come to that same realization like your in-laws did, where somebody's talking to their dog and they're like, man, if the dog understands what they're saying, I need to get with it. I think it's the same thing. How are you going to make money? Maybe you can make some money in a neighborhood where you can still dominate your own birth language and still survive. But the American dream probably won't come to you that way. And I think most people come here with that plan. And most people I've spoken to, that's never even an issue. Nobody ever defends, hey, I'm going to speak whatever language I want. I think it ultimately becomes people speak the language of capitalism. And they know that if I want to have a job and be successful, send my kids to school, most people, my dad, right? My dad's name is Juan. His firstborn son became John, not Juan Jr. My dad's doing, followed by Robert and Richard and the rest of us, because he felt, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Yes, English is the language of success, no doubt. I want to touch on something that's in a more depth of discussion on reparations. I think it's safe to say we're all against it, and that's fine. But especially when you have kids in high school and college that are being sold what a great idea it is. So just as an example, I told our oldest son who's in college, he's at that bastion of conservatism, University of Oregon. And I said to him, my grandparents from one side came from Russia, the other side came from Poland, escaping, Hitler. They lost half their family. Therefore, I owe money to Oprah. So I'm trying to put it in a way that they understand it. So that's my way of trying to make them go, what would you tell our audience about when someone's for reparations, and instead of saying, well, it's crazy, I'm against it, that doesn't persuade anybody.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, I make it as I was born in 1978. I'm telling them, when I was born, there were no black slaves. I'll be damned if you're going to take money from me to pay it to anybody who was a slave, because that just wasn't how it worked. I didn't grow up seeing it. I only read about it. So let the guys who wrote the book that I read, let them pay the reparations. I'm not paying for
it. You shut that down quickly. That's great.
Well, we all know that there was prejudice and racism, and there were people that were held back. But one of the problems with things like affirmative action, even though the intent is good, it kind of casts the shadow of doubt of someone going into a university and someone saying, well, did you get here because you were qualified, or did you get here because, you just were given an affirmative action? And I think that hurts and insults blacks.
Well, and it applies to others as well. Here's what I think about that. I disagree with you. I don't think it is something that was well intentioned. I think its intentions were to harm people. It's kind of like not teaching your kid to walk. That's not well intentioned. That's bad. We shouldn't treat people differently or like they're handicaps because I happen to be a little browner than you or someone might be a little darker than me. I don't think that has any impact. I mean, that's like telling Ben Carson, all right, listen, the only reason you could separate two brains in brain surgery is because, you're a black guy from, come on, let's be, it's just stupid. I mean, Ben Carson's smarter than the three of us combined on our best day. So, I mean, to me, this is one of those things we can't even have a debate on that. I couldn't even have that conversation. I think affirmative action is wrong. It hurts people. It's detrimental. I don't think it helps people. It may have been maybe thought of to be well-intentioned at the time. Today, I look at it as racist policy.
I'm going to guess that you had tremendous success with changing people's minds.
Maybe.
What pearls of wisdom, what nuggets can you give our audience? Because we all in all of our lives, we have friends and family that we love dearly, that politically we just go, I don't understand how you could vote. Now, if someone said, how could you vote for Trump? Oh my God, there's a long list of reasons. I'm not going to go into that. But
yeah.
How have you been
how much time do you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. How have you been able to successfully get people to come over from the dark side?
Yeah, well, I think oftentimes it becomes an arm wrestling match, and you have to be the stronger person. And I don't mean physically, but I mean just be armed with the facts and be armed with logic. If you know somebody, if you're going to engage in a battle of wits, like the old saying, make sure it's not with an unarmed man. But if you are going to engage in a battle of wits, make sure that you know what you're talking about, so that when you bring facts and logic and reason, people say, "Oh, wow, that makes a ton of sense." And not these emotional arguments that, listen, conservatives are bad people. They don't like the people at the border. Like Joy Reid said yesterday, the Republicans are afraid of brown people. I mean, I look at that and I think, Joy Reid, you should be embarrassed for yourself to make such a statement. A woman that I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say, I believe she's an intelligent woman. I believe that she's successful in her career. And I would be ashamed if I ever said something that weak. If I said, oh, Bernie Sanders, it's because he's afraid of Republican or brown people or white. This is stupid. It's very stupid. I don't think it has any bearing or grasp on reality or anything that's factual. So I think you have to have a set of facts. And honestly, that's a lesson that I've always known. People have, coming up have taught me. But something I learned politically as a young man, one of my political mentors told me that don't ever let anybody put you on defense. Always put them on defense. You need to be on offense. So you have to be wired that way. And it's unnatural for me. I tend to want to go, really, why? Tell me more. More of a shrink, honestly. It's like my go-to. But sometimes you just have to, not only hit them with the right, but come back with the left and then come back again with another combo, a three-piece combo, and make sure that you have the facts on your side so they can go, oh, wow, snap, that's right. And honestly, financial examples to me make the most sense to the most people. If they can say, you could just, Trump. Hey, how did you do in 2015 financially? Oh, tough year. Oh, yeah. How'd you do it, in 2018, 2019? Oh, actually, I had a pretty good year. All right, thanks. I'll be back. When you catch up to that, and I do stuff like that I think people, and honestly, most people, when they see the effect in their pocketbook, they realize, you know what? People may not like Trump, but I liked his effect on my pocketbook.
On that note, we want to thank you very much for being here. This is actually a very special show. The Jewish Republican Alliance was founded in March of 2016, and now it's March of 2021. It was 5 years. It's also my father-in-law's birthday. Happy birthday if you're watching. But we want to thank you so much for being here, for coming on our show, and for your friendship. And we look forward to doing great things with you in the coming year.
Yeah, well, thank you, guys. I say Mazel Tov, L'chaim, whichever one is more appropriate. Happy 5-year anniversary. I think what you guys are doing is spectacular. Keep up the great work. It's great to be partnered up with you guys, and I'm really happy to have joined all of you. Honestly, thank you.
Thank you, Rich, very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you for all your support you've given us over the years and for the support you're going to give us over the coming years. Like I said earlier, we're in this fight and we're going to continue to fight. And what can you do? I mean, there's 3 things you can do. You can stay informed, get involved, and make a difference. You can join our conversations. You can attend our events when we do them again, participate in our social media, network with other members and guests when we can do that again. Get involved by joining our alliance, serve on a committee, volunteer, refer a friend to what we're doing, and become a member. Make a difference. Make a tax-deductible donation today. Invite a friend, start a chapter. Our organization is growing and you can be a part of it. I invite all of you to go to our website, jewishrepublicanalliance.org, and check us out and see what we're doing. Thank you all for being here. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have a great weekend until we meet again. We'll be back next week. See you soon.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye.